Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. We have an IOTA video for you guys today. IoT on the exchange, of course, one of our favorite projects here on the Whales of Wall Street. Before we do that, don't forget, if you haven't done so already, smash that subscribe button if you can, and also please do hit that like button as well. Massively helps the channel and we can get to newer audiences and keep growing as much as we can. So thank you for that in advance. Let's go straight into the topic, guys. So first of all, it's around the European Data Act. Okay, so you may or may not have heard of this. Of course, this very much coincidentally, timing-wise, matches up with what's going on here in the UK in relation to the recent laws that have passed in Royal Assent of trade finance. We've also got the utilization of cryptocurrency, digital currency, and stablecoins, etc., being able to be regulated and used here in the UK, albeit for the trade finance one, I think, begins on the 20th of September. So we've got all of that going on, but also there's huge other areas that we still haven't got answers to. First of all, around the world in that similar pattern, albeit the US is catching up, but also some big areas of interest are things like artificial intelligence regulation and of course data privacy. This is absolutely huge area of interest to anyone and everyone, whether you're a business or a person, individuals, you're working with companies and companies working with others. Whatever it might be, it's a huge area of interest and potential concern as well. So the European Data Act is very much there for a number of reasons. I'm just going to read this top line here. The European Data Act makes more data available for use and sets out rules on who can use and access what data for which purposes across all economic sectors in the EU. That's a very broad topic there. It's a very broad line in the sense that it's like, we're pretty much defining everything for you, both as businesses and people, general public, and you're just going to have to deal with it. We all know that, you know, if you're using smartphones, etc., and devices, data is always accumulated. The question really is, it's not so much the products or the devices themselves, it's the companies behind them who are gathering the information and data, using that for sending various adverts to you. I mean, there's general weird things always, like if you're talking about something to your mates during the day and then all of a sudden you get weird adverts on YouTube and stuff later on in that day as well. All of those kind of things, which we probably signed up to in the terms and conditions, we just didn't bother reading it. But that's a little example of that. But there's loads of other areas, guys, of real interest, where, as I said, about AI and IoT, etc. So IoT, Internet of Things, anything that's connected to the internet, whether it's a smartphone, a smart plug, a bulb, security cameras, fridges these days, pretty much most things. But this part here is quite interesting. So we look here regarding the Internet of Things data. In particular, the focus moved of the functionalities of the data collected by connected products instead of the products themselves. So we've got that rendition. That's great. This is quite interesting. The agreement also ensures an adequate level of protection of trade secrets and intellectual property rights, accompanied by relevant safeguards against possible abusive behavior or data holders. So there's loads of interesting things. There's loads of pros and there's loads of cons to it for sure. But the big piece of the puzzle is the integration of blockchain technology. Now, of course, this has a magnitude area of smart contracts, the ability of validation, processing, verifying, etc. Some of it's governance based, and so on and so forth. But there's some really interesting renditions in the Act that's still in development, of course, around smart contracts and how this is utilized, or how can it be stopped or blocked? Who's blocking and stopping that? Who decides that? And in this development stage of blockchain, which we're still in, despite all these great and big projects that we either invest in or know of, the reality is we're still in this development stage and trying to coordinate with these policymakers, around, what is acceptable, what isn't, what should and shouldn't be used, regulations, standardizations, all these things, right? So, of course, the reason why we talk about IOTA is because they have a heavy integration with the EBSI, so the European Blockchain Institute, etc., in relation to building the frameworks that pretty much every business and company and person will be utilizing over the next 5-10 years, with blockchain technology powering a lot of that in the background. Now, we talked about in many videos AI's integration, IoT, supply, demand, etc., all being automated, simultaneous, based on data, algorithmic information, etc., etc. But this conversation around data is so huge and applies to so many crazy things. There's no right or wrong answer right now. So As we're moving forward, there's quite interesting information here around energy consumption. The ESG, of course, is a massive agenda right now from the European aspect and the World Economic Forum, etc. And all these things have data included in them. Our usage data and how that's used, or data in general. Can we buy and sell that? Which is a big part of blockchain. The opportunity is to tokenize your data, and you can actually go, hey company, you can take my data, but you're going to pay me for it, or at least have that transparency to see where has my information actually gone. Whereas at the moment we don't really know. A lot of it's hidden by companies, etc. So there's a load of interesting things here from some aspirational areas here. Factory robot breaking down. I don't know why these are some random examples here, but better access is a prime example of that. In terms of how all these things are used, and how from a economical or sustainability perspective that certain things can be turned on and off. And smart contracts is really important, guys, because when we talk about transactions, or even a machine or an appliance working based on internet drive and data, even things like geotagging, like now your smart bulbs can come on as you're approaching the house in winter because it knows where you are in your car, and it's all based on Amazon Alexa, etc. So all these things can be accessed and checked and changed. It's a bit of a sci-fi kind of thing, isn't it? A bit of a film, like that machines are taking over and all this kind of stuff. But you kind of get the idea that this is what's trying to be achieved through this act. Of course, as I said, IOTA has so many implementations into these areas. Identity we just covered, sustainability, digital identity in general is absolutely a huge topic, and even trade. We talked about trade finance, this whole supply and chain demand, logistical area of data. What goods are being passed back and forth, and that reaction or relation between a business and a business, cross-border aspects, all the things linked together. But this was what was coming up as a question of concern from not just IOTA, who did a joint article here, by the way, in response to that. I won't go over this word for word, but it's relating to an Article 30 in this document, which I'll put a link in the description below so you can read it for yourselves. They're very much representing that they are grateful that policymakers are discussing this. This is an open letter between IOTA and a few of their other tech partners and partners in general of what smart contract actually means in this vicinity, because they're mentioning here that digital contract and smart contracts are actually quite different things, but they keep coordinating smart contracts in amongst this conversation. And as we mentioned, they're such imperative parts of blockchain. But then talking about this potential kill switch terminology, where it becomes quite interesting. So this is from the Cointelegraph, literally yesterday, ironically. So EU lawmakers have reached a political consensus on the Data Act that has a kill switch for smart contracts, causing an uproar in the crypto community. So again, that topic about centralization, decentralization, who's controlling this stuff, who's making the decisions, when do we get a say, all of these big question marks coming up in our heads. So this is where it comes in. Smart contract kill switch. The blockchain community is largely concerned about one provision in the Data Act, namely that automated data sharing agreements contain a kill switch by which they could be terminated or halted in the event of a security breach. Many blockchain experts contend that the current definition of smart contracts in the Data Act is broad, fearing it may lead to unintended consequences for existing smart contracts on public blockchains. For example, the text of the upcoming law doesn't distinguish between just digital contracts and smart contracts utilizing distributed ledger technology. Above all, the Data Act supposedly doesn't give clear details about the conditions under which safe termination or interruption kill switch should occur, and it is hard to predict the potential outcomes with a high degree of certainty. Because if you turn these smart contracts off in certain areas, it could dictate or have a ripple effect on other areas of the blockchain and other areas of this whole entire integrative space. So when we're talking about AI or decision making, or an appliance working for a particular reason, or you're thinking about hospital machinery, whatever it might be, the wrong thing gets turned off, and who's deciding that can be absolutely detrimental, maybe even potentially to life. So it's really interesting to see that this is coming up in the equation. This is why IOTA got involved, and obviously heavily, as I said, orientated around the EBSI anyway. But this open letter reflects on that to say, appreciate what you're doing, but we must discuss this. And especially IOTA in this sense that they're trying to build the frameworks for the European Union through the EBSI initiative. this is where it gets really crazy, guys. It shows you not necessarily the immaturity, I think that's a strong word, but it shows you where we are in the cycle of everything, that we still got things to sort out, to iron out, and that could take a bit more time. But certainly I still believe that all the majority of these technological evolvements and revolutions will occur around 2025, especially when CBDCs get ticked off. We'll have obviously the new RTGS systems. We've already got frameworks and regulations for many other areas of crypto usage or cryptography and blockchain usage as well, and the digitalization of everything. This is a big part of it, of course, absolutely. So it must be right, and it's definitely a great time for companies and projects like IOTA and many others to really get to grips with it and make their voices heard, almost on behalf of ourselves, really, because we're going to be the ones that are using it in the end, along with businesses as well. As I said, it comes off the back as well that IOTA are heavily involved with the EBSI and did enter that phase, of course, we mentioned in the video earlier this year. Next phase 2B of the EU blockchain pre-commercial procurement aspect, the building of the framework, the whole utilization of blockchain, AI, IoT coming together in the European format. So there's absolutely huge areas of interest to this, but of course, you must tick that box off for regulation and standardization around data and what is determining this, who's in control of it, and where do smart contracts, etc., fit in all of this as well. So plenty of talking points, absolutely, within this conversation going on, but we must keep an eye on it for sure as things develop. It's really interesting. But that wraps up that bit of the topic, guys. Let's go into the chart of IOTA. And before we do, I just wanted to show you this website. I used it quite many times. Don't worry about the drop downs here. This puts the automatic pricing in, but you can adjust this accordingly yourself manually. But just think of these numbers in the equation, right, guys? So at the moment, to get about 1,000 IOTA, you need to spend about roughly $150, and that's based on a price of around 15 cents. So keep that in mind, because it's roughly around the price point that we're at. And this was around about just nearly enough the IOTA's previous all-time high. So it shows you a bit of a potential return that you could get on these small investment opportunities. Again, not financial advice, but certainly something I'm quite interested in, as we see IOTA is very much at the low points that we didn't actually see all the way back since 2020, albeit that we have touched on this kind of price point area in the last couple of months. So bear this in mind, because it's quite interesting to look at the chart in that format. So here we are. I've pulled it out to begin with, and we can see that from its existing position all the way up to the previous all-time high is a massive 1,685% gain opportunity. Now, I do anticipate potentially IOTA getting way beyond that as we get all the definitions of everything, the regulations, the integration, and the actual utility kicking in. That's where it gets quite interesting. So we just said, remember 2024 is one of the notes in the previous videos. But I also anticipate the next fib level, as we mentioned, going higher in the next big bull cycle around 2024, 2025. I haven't put it quite up to the $5, but look at that. Up from its current position all the way up to around $4.23, 7,664% gain. That is humongous. So there's really big opportunities as we open this up. As I mentioned previously, in 2020, this is roughly where we are right now with the price point. As I said, even more recently, we have touched down on that area. So we're really defining IOTA right now. The lowest point was back here in March 2020. Of course, we had the huge crash worldwide, bringing it down to 5 cents. Wouldn't that be a dream to get it back down there again to accumulate? But absolutely, there's a possibility that we can definitely try and hit these sort of 11 to 10 cent marks again, of which we didn't come too far off back here in June, albeit it was roughly around 13 odd cents, and where we are currently right now is very close to that as well. So you can see the dip point here on the 17th of August when we had a bit of a mini market crash, for a better word, that dropped us down to a low of 13.18 cents. So definitely opportunities for accumulation around these various areas, and for sure there was a coordination that we drew in the last video or representation of IOTA that you can see that we're bouncing off these fib levels, can't quite keep up on those, and then we're penetrating back down. So we've got this situation now where if we were to take some of these higher and lower points that we saw in the previous times, this is where we're entering the phases of opportunity. So there's an argument to say that we could hit these lower fib levels around 11-12 cents, exactly what we mentioned, that reflect these points back in February, March 2020. And of course, we had the massive uprise. There's a huge gap here, which we've mentioned in a multitude of different videos in the past, to suggest that we have no idea the proper support levels of IOTA. So absolutely, I think there's a lot of holders of IOTA. There's a lot of people that hold this for the long term, like me personally, which is great because we know that there's a lot of confidence in there. I very much doubt many people will be selling off significant amounts of IOTA purely because we're probably at a loss anyway in the grand scheme of things, but also what it's achieving or going to achieve in the future. So there's great gain opportunity and a great gain opportunity in terms of accumulation areas right now. So as we sit here, the 14-day RSI in the bottom left is showing 30. This is very low. It's good DCA opportunity in my opinion, not financial advice. 90 days showing 43 and 28-day close of 35.95. These are very low opportunities. Great to grab some, which is what I've been doing the last couple of days, and just being a bit more patient to see if we do come down lower, because as I said, we need to tick these numbers and data points off at some point for sure for us to do that U-turn and make that bull cycle occur in however long that is, 6-18 months, who knows. But the point being is that we don't want to see too much volatility with IOTA and other assets, and to get past that, we need to start defining these support areas more strictly so we can take ourselves up and beyond. Yes, of course, we'll come and retest them again and again, but we define support, therefore we don't have too much of a risk entity aspect going lower than those, or as little as possible at least. So those are the areas of interest for me personally. I do think we're going to have a bit of a bounce around effect for sure over the next few weeks. Performance wise on the right hand side, it's kind of reflecting that. It's not looking great. It's red across the board. The numbers aren't huge in negative for the week and the month, which is fine, because we have had some uprises. As these prices drop, people take that opportunity to drive it up. So I wouldn't be too surprised, guys, to see us taking it back up to this maybe 17 cent mark and then redefining the areas again. We'll have to see how that plays out. But the 6 months not looking fantastic at all. The year to date and the year, well, they're reflective obviously based on year to date in general for this year, but also the year as an overview of 364, how many days there are in a year. So again, not looking great, but from a buyer's perspective, it's pretty fantastic in a way, because we're at the lower regions. Yes, it could come down lower, absolutely. That's why we DCA into this. But the opportunity of uprise is significant, and certainly to get to those previous all-time high areas and beyond that really defines the picture nicely, in my opinion, as we invest and accumulate at these lower regions. Some people go 15 cents is too high, 10 cents is too high compared to other assets, but look at where it's been, look where we believe it will go based on utility, real world utility and all these great things, and push it beyond the boundaries we've ever seen before. So I'm really excited about it. I think IOTA is a phenomenal project. I love its DAG application, direct to cyclic graph. If you don't know what that is, we'll put the video in after this one. But there's big things occurring, certainly loads of things to be defined, but IOTA is for sure in amongst it all. Guys, we're going to wrap the video up there. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next IOTA update video. Take care and bye-bye.